Now one nice thing about ChromeNav is we have Spectral library building capabilities and Spectral searching. So let's learn how to do that. So we'll first open a chromatogram, and we'll use the PAH's standard number 1. Now as we see, we have our peak names here listed for us. And of course the first thing we're going to have to do is build a Spectral library. So in this case, as this is a standard, we'll build a Spectral library based off of this standard. To do so, click File, Spectral Library, and we'll create a new one. We'll call this PAH, and select Create. We can now close that library. We're now ready to add Spectra to it. If we click on the PDA view, we see in the Contour plus Chromatogram plus Spectra view, we have our wavelengths above, we have our contour on the bottom, and our spectra at the right. As you can see, there are other views below, but let's go to the on-peak spectra view, and at the bottom we get a sample chromatogram, in this case at 210 nanometers. Above, we have 3 spectra we can show, or overlay should we choose. So if we click on the first to highlight it in yellow, and at the bottom right click to say Add Spectra, we now can move our cursor anywhere along until we get onto our peak, and then left click. And now we see our spectra has been added. Should we want to overlay, click on it again, right click to add spectra, and move your cursor. Peak number 3 or 4, and now we see an overlay of 2 spectra. Now in this case, as we're going to add some spectra to build our library, we're going to delete the second one, so we only show 1 chromatogram, 1 spectra per. So if we click on the second one and add spectra, we can add our peak. We click on the third, we can add another one. So now, if we right click on our spectra of peak number 2, we can add it to the spectral library. Or, in this case, we can add all 3. We'll select the library we want to add them to, and click Add. And what you'll notice is they are added to the library, but the retention time is used as a spectral name. If we look back to our peak ID table, we'll come back and name these. So at current, we'll save this library, and we'll close it. Now we can go back, and we can add some more. Simply right click, and we can delete the spectra in the first. Right click to delete the spectra in the second. Right click to delete the spectra in the third. And now we can add the remaining spectra. Now again, if we right click on one of the spectra, we can add to the spectral library and say all spectra. We'll again select the library we want to add them to and click Add. And now you see we have a total of 6, all with the retention timestamp currently on them. So we'll save that. Now, if we go back to our chromatogram view, we can actually enter in the names of those. File, Spectral Library, and we'll open our library. And now if we slide these over slightly, we can see that our current first spectra is a naphthalene based on retention time. Our second one, that elutes at just about 4 minutes, is biphenyl. Now these retention times, of course, are slightly off as I just simply click on the chromatogram, but they are very close. The third one, fluorine. The fourth, anthracene. The fifth, pyrene. The sixth, and now we hit the save button. and we can close. Now if we wish, let's just add that very last one just to complete our spectral library. So we'll delete the very first spectra, or to show you another place to put it in, if we go back to the contour, chromatogram, and spectra section, make sure our XY cursor is checked, and now we can simply check right there, and now our spectra of our last peak appears on the right. We can right click and add to spectral library, and now we have our last peak. We will save, close that, again go back to the chromatogram, and now we have the peak name, so we can open our spectral library again. And again, based on retention time, we can name our spectra. And we can save. And now we can close. So one last thing we'll need to do before we do a spectral search of an unknown sample is to build the spectral search conditions. Right here is our edit spectral search method. So click on that. And the first thing we'll do on the right is select the library that we want to search. Of course, in this case, we only have one option, but you could have additional libraries available. We'll then set the range. We do not need to do the full wavelength range if we don't want to, so let's start at 220 and go up to 350. If we want, we can check the retention time, and we can set the search results so that it must meet a certain correlation to be accepted, and in this case only show 3 spectra should others show a good correlation. So let's save this search. And close it. So now we'll open an unknown chromatogram from the PAH section, of course. And now in the PDA view, as the XY cursor is checked, we'll select this particular peak. The spectra is of course to the right. If we right click and search the spectral library, we select the particular search we want to do. And what we see, of course, is that particular peak based on the spectra matches up with fluorine. You see your fluorine peak below of the standard, and here's your unknown. You get your correlation factor on the right, the library you searched, and the wavelength ranges. If we want to do another search, simply click on that peak. If we right-click on the spectra and do a spectral library search, again we select the search we want to use, and of course this one matches up with anthracene based on our spectra, the unknown, and our standard, and our correlation is very good again.